Hello, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Mike O'Donnell, Managing Director for the Mattress Recycling Council, and I suspect many of you are watching this webinar because you operate mattress recycling facilities. So I'm going to start with a brief background about MRC and why we're hosting this webinar before handing it over to Dave Hollinger with Doyle Sullivan Consulting. Let's start with ISPA. ISPA is the International Sleep Products Association. They're a 100-year-old trade association for the mattress industry. Without the support of ISPA, MRC would not exist today, and we wouldn't be the successful operation that we are today. So in 2013, ISPA worked with 3 states to pass mattress recycling legislation. And with the passage of those laws, it created MRC, and MRC was created specifically to develop statewide mattress recycling programs. It's also important to note that we are a program administrator, meaning that we contract with third parties to collect, transport, and recycle mattresses on our behalf. A bit more information about MRC. We started our operations in 2015. Since that time, we've contracted with over 20 different mattress recycling facilities of all shapes, sizes, and abilities in our 3 states where we currently operate. Combined, those facilities have deconstructed and recycled over 10 million mattresses and box springs, which is a tremendous number, but we're learning that with volume also comes risk. So I've been thinking about hosting a fire prevention webinar for quite some time now, because I'm seeing too many fires across our recycling network, and almost all of them are preventable. Since 2015, I'm aware of 19 fires at North American mattress recycling facilities, and I suspect that there's others, other smaller fires that I'm just not aware of. The fire risks to your employees, to your buildings, to your ability to maintain and obtain insurance, and the ability of MRC to maintain and expand our programs is very real. Again, all of these fires are preventable, which is why we're having this conversation today. So with that uplifting introduction, I'm going to introduce Mr. Dave Hollinger. And as you can see from this slide, Dave has over 40 years of experience in all aspects of fire. As a firefighter, as a code official, a fire officer, and a fire marshal. For the past 3 years, Dave has been working with MRC as a fire safety consultant and has performed about 25 fire assessments at actual mattress recycling facilities. So he probably has more experience than just about anyone out there about understanding your line of work and specifically what you do and the risks that you incur because you take apart large volumes of mattresses. Today, we're going to talk about fires. We're going to talk about fire prevention, and we're going to talk about specific observations and conditions that exist at mattress deconstruction facilities. Dave has a real passion for his work, and I hope you leave this webinar with something to make your operations safer today. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, Dave.
Thank you, Mike. This was a fire at a mattress recycling facility just recently. It is one scene that you don't want to see at your facility. I have been in the risk mitigation reduction business for over 40 years, riding big red trucks, ERTs, you'll hear this often, in very active fire departments and extinguishing fires for over 25 of those years. And I have learned that the best way to put out a fire is to prevent one from starting in the first place. And hopefully, today's presentation will demonstrate how this ties together. These are real headlines from media outlets over the years. Don't let your facility's name be the next one to fill in the blanks. This is a real fire at a mattress recycling facility. As you can see, it just about destroyed the entire facility. Stopped operations for many days, and interrupted their business.
Hey, Dave, before you move on, I just wanted to mention that throughout this presentation, we've done our best to, that video, of course, was an actual mattress recycling facility, but take actual photos of fires and situations that have happened at mattress recycling facilities. We're trying to make this as relevant as possible for everybody.
Thank you, Mike. So business interruptions can come in many forms. What's the impact of 3 of your employees being absent one day, 1 week? How did the pandemic affect you? What if the trucks can't get into your facility? What if the trucks can't get your work out? What would happen if your building was shut down from an uncontrolled fire? A fire could be considered a disaster when it interrupts your business. Fires that are uncontrolled require the intervention of additional measures after first aid devices, also known as fire extinguishers, are not enough. A sprinkler system activation and fire department response make for a longer business interruption. How long can you sustain without daily operations? Do you have business interruption insurance? So it should be your goal to manage a fire by preventing one from occurring. After riding those BRTs for over 25 years in extinguishing fires, I made my way into the Fire Prevention Division of the Washington, D.C. Fire Department. It was there, it hit me. Preventing fires from starting in the first place is the best way to extinguish one. It may not seem like it, but technology is a part of your process. Disasters caused by technology involve the failure or breakdown of systems, equipment, and engineering standards that causes harm. The term itself includes a wide range of modern issues and consequences of technology mismanagement and engineering mistakes. The next 2 slides sum up my approach to fire safety and emergency preparedness. I believe this concept to be well researched, true in a lot of instances, and have used it over the years. We use different terms to describe a fire incident: crisis, emergency, disaster, or tragedy. The term disaster is what we're using as it is referred to in the case of this interesting narrative. Disaster management encompasses all aspects of planning, mitigation, response, and recovery. So the stages of disaster include all the following. The incubation period is the accumulation of unnoticed set of events, which are at odds with the accepted beliefs about hazards and the norms for avoidance, like waste accumulation. The triggering phase is when an unsafe act, such as an error, mistake, or violation of the rules or procedures occurs, like dragging foundations. The event itself is to be considered unavoidable once the triggering event has occurred, like the smoke is rising in the corner of your facility. The incubation period is a key element in the process that can cause a disaster. The time is wasted for crucial signs to be misread, evidence ignored, or misinterpreted is important to the process. There are organizations or entities that work themselves into incompetence, learning to do the wrong things better. And the minor events that interact and accumulate to produce a major system failure can exist unnoticed for long periods of time. And this is worth repeating. A substantial effort must be then made to focus on the incubation period to prevent the chain of offense from occurring. I have observed in my travels to the facilities many incubation periods. Are you ignoring the incubation problem and period? So fire prevention and risk reduction are self-explanatory, and I would like to explain the proven paths to success. The 5 E's of fire prevention and risk reduction are engineering, enforcement, education, emergency response, and economic incentive. This concept is a way of identifying risk and determining solutions and is promoted by the U.S. Fire Administration. Your facility was built for a purpose, a use. And whether that has changed since you have now occupied it for however long you have been there, only you or the owner can say. Depending on whether you own or lease and what the agreement states will dictate whose responsibility it is to maintain compliance. And as you can see here, this is a sprinkler valve assembly. Are there engineering technology solutions available besides your sprinkler system? This could be the configuration and height of the stacks, your process for cleaning forklifts, and methods for alerting staff that a fire has occurred. Enforcement. Don't wait for that fire inspector or official to inspect your facility or the incident to stay in compliance. You as a manager owner can comply with the code by assessing, identifying, and correcting the deficiencies. And if you need assistance in this effort, there should be some local fire safety consultants that can help you.
Dave, I think that this actually requires some emphasis as well, that we're going to talk about general fire code today, but your local fire code could be different. And we encourage mattress recyclers that are out there to find a local consultant, somebody that understands local code, that knows your local fire inspector, and that has that relationship to help you not only be compliant, but create a culture of continuous compliance at your facility.
That's a great point, Mike, and relationships matter. And meeting your fire inspector before they have to come in and cite you or come in and inspect or investigate a fire after it happens is important. And I know a few of the facilities out there have made that connection through their permitting process or just other visits. Annual fire extinguisher training and fire safety talks are what you can provide to your employees. Training is required by OSHA. Enhanced and continuous messages will keep the workforce engaged. And you might also think about maybe some type of incentives for those employees that embrace this fire safety culture. Here we are, the BRTs again, the big red trucks, right? These are the last resort. After you turn the lights off, lock the door for the evening, and make your drive home, if that BRT happens to pass you going the opposite direction towards your facility, do you wonder if you checked everything before you left? We want to avoid the emergency response part of the 5 E's. By not having a fire, we'll keep the lights on and the revenue stream flowing. It may be time to check your insurance coverage. Do you have sufficient coverage for a business interruption? And now I'm going to touch on the science of fire. Traditionally known, and what we probably all learned in science class as a fire triangle, the new terminology is fire tetrahedron. For a fire to start, you need oxygen or air, fuel, heat, and a chemical chain reaction to bring them together. And conversely, to extinguish a fire is to remove one of these elements. All fires can be extinguished by cooling, smothering, starving, or by interrupting the combustion process to extinguish a fire. The air, fuel, and heat are familiar terms to all of us. But once a fire has started, the resulting exothermic chain reaction sustains the fire and allows it to continue until or unless at least one of the elements of the fire is blocked. Now, a little background and perspective on items of interest that affect your facility. What you're looking at here are the 5 main classes of fires categorized by what caused the fire or what the fire uses as fuel. This relates to the type of extinguisher that is recommended. As you can see, the 5 classes A, B, C, D, and K, you'll notice that your class A materials are mostly of what you have. You have limited amounts of class B, liquids or gas, gasoline, or grease. Class C fires are best extinguished by cutting the power off. You're not likely to have Class D fires. Those are combustible metals. And unless you have a deep fat fryer, there's no reason to have a Class K extinguisher. It's not applicable here. So we're really looking at the first three, the A, B, C. And those are the red extinguishers that you may have hanging on your wall. But we'll get into fire extinguishers a little later. Then you have your commodities. Your commodity classes are how fire inspectors will treat your compliance as it relates to their interpretation of the code. It is based on the rate of combustion, how fast and dangerous material burns. Commodity classifications are broken down into classes 1 through 4 and A, Group A. Plastics. Class 1 being the lowest and Group A, plastics being the highest hazard level. So when you look at your facility, and these are typical pictures from mattress recycling facilities, you won't notice a Class 1 because these are normally non-combustible products. They're very low on the commodity class, things you don't have to worry about. Your Class 2 are items you probably find in the offices, right? And other items around the facility. But when you get into your Class 3, you're talking about your foundations that are stacked almost like pallets, and your mattresses. That's your Class 3. Your Class 4 is when you get into your baled products, right? Because again, to reiterate, is the rate of combustion. Your Class 4 is really, and again, the Class 4 is your baled. Then your plastics, your Group A, are your highest, or your fastest burning and most common type of plastic. Those are your poly mattresses listed on, as you can see in the photo below.
Yeah, that's a great slide, Dave. And I think the important takeaway is mattress recyclers have a significant amount of high hazard material on site, and they have an awful lot of it. So important takeaway here is, yes, you're going to have high hazard material, but if you're not accumulating material on site, if you're keeping your inventory at the lowest level that you can, it reduces your fire load, it reduces your risk. It's a form of fire prevention.
And you're right, Mike. And it's funny how your mattresses are in one class when they are intact, but once they become baled, they go to a higher class because of the rate of combustion that could be expected from that bale, as opposed to the mattresses. It's funny enough that that occurs, but it's still how the fire code interprets it. Then you have the classification of hazards. For the purposes of sprinkler design and other fire protection features, there are 3 classes of hazards, which are defined based on the fire hazards that are expected to be in the space. Your facility meets the classification of the extra hazard. This classification applies to spaces where the quantity and combustibility of contents are very high and dust, lint, or other materials are present, which introduce the probability of fires that burn hot and spread fast, such as upholstery shops, sawmills, plywood manufacturers, or textile factories. And you can add mattress recycling facilities to that. The classification is primarily based on the presence of highly combustible solids. So recap, I just threw 3 types of classifications at you. And what does it all mean? So it boils down to the interaction of your local fire inspector, and what you should have present in your facility. When you look at the fire classification, the classes of or types of fires on the left-hand side. Class A fires, what would be the likely fires encountered in your facility. Your commodities are classes that you're likely to store in your facility. This is important because fire inspectors could require extra protections due to the burning rates associated with the class. And the classes of hazards on the right are the are important for the selection, sizing, and travel distance for fire extinguishers and other code requirements as determined by the fire inspectors. So here you have it. These could be the most recognizable pictures you'll see in the slide deck, and every one of you probably have seen this. This points out the fact that forklifts that have heat generating equipment and exhaust need to be cleaned regularly. You need to keep the fuel and heat separated. Here's an example of dust and waste building up that presents an opportunity for heat or spark from friction. Even a small spark could ignite this fuel. And I have 3 words for this: housekeeping, housekeeping, housekeeping. It is imperative that fuels be separated from your facility. These fuels, vegetation, trailers full of mattresses, and other stacked material are vulnerable to arson that will spread to your building. Keep the heat generating devices away from the fuel. There are many heat generating devices operating in your facility that require extra attention so that they don't become the source of initiation or ignition. So what you have here on the left is a grinder very close to the stacks. Hot work equipment by itself, benign, sitting there, fine. But when you start cutting or welding, torching, you have to maintain a certain distance from combustible material. And of course, on the right, you have motors. Those motors generate heat, and that's where you have to make sure you keep them clean. Data for fire and mattress recycling facilities is not specifically collected by the National Incident Fire Reporting System or the National Fire Protection Association, but MRC has received information from the fire incidents over the years. The National Fire Protection Association just published a timely report that provides some data on warehouse fires. Although the activities that are conducted under your roof are a bit different that goes on under theirs, a fire inspector or code official may consider you the same type of occupancies. We'll make this link available at the end of the presentation, the link for this research report. So from that report, you can see that the leading cause of warehouse fires are described as the electrical distribution and lighting. Not far behind that are tools and equipment. Do you think this is consistent with fires that occur in mattress recycling facilities? Another data point from warehouse fires in that report shows that the first thing ignited is rubbish, trash, or waste.
This is such an important point, Dave. I mean, this is what we do. We're taking apart old mattresses, and for a fire department inspector, whenever they go in, they do an investigation, they're going to consider what you have on site to be rubbish, trash, or waste. And it's a great segue into the next slide here.
Right. So 79% of these fires were caused, well, 79% of them were either unintentional or failure of equipment or heat source, according to this report. But MRC's data will tell you that you can see in this chart that mattress recycling fires are predominantly caused by friction. And guess what the first thing that was ignited? Right, waste material. And this is obvious because as a deconstruction process creates a lot of waste material in your facility. Add friction to that process and you have the elements of the fire triangle waiting for the chemical chain reaction.
And so for the folks on the webinar today, again, friction can occur one of 2 ways is what we typically see at mattress recycling facilities. The one is shredders. Shredders can be very effective at volume reduction. They can be very effective at reducing the time required to process materials or to change materials, your mattress materials into a form which is more valuable as a commodity. The second type of friction is whenever foundations or mattresses are drug across concrete. We've seen an increasing number of smoldering fires or full-on fires because of friction from dragging combustible materials.
Thank you, Mike. So the fire code stipulates where and how you store LP gas. The quantities stored are also regulated. For you chemists out there, I understand that this is not true structural formula, but it does represent a chemical formula. Although not recorded as a cause of any mattress recycling fires, the hazards of LP gas make it a significant item to pay attention to, as a threat of what it can do when ignited is super dangerous. LP gas storage requirements are pretty much the same depending on the location of your facility. Most all state codes follow NFPA 58 when it comes to the protection from impact, location, and quantity. Signage that protects first responders, alerting them to the dangers of the storage, is found in NFPA 704, commonly known as your fire diamond. And you can see that there on the slide, fire diamond. Forklift fire safety is not the only danger from them. Carbon monoxide safety would be a consideration for those facility managers and owners. The age of a forklift matters. An older forklift, no matter how well tuned or serviced, produces a higher output percentages of carbon monoxide compared to a newer one. In mitigating risk, the goal is to reduce the probability of a fire and reduce the consequence of an uncontrolled fire. The 5 stages or 5 strategies of risk are: assume and accept, avoid, control, transfer, or watch and monitor risk. Take out the avoidance and transfer and embrace the others with a few helpful techniques on the following slides. Thermal cameras are a great tool for inspecting heat signatures on piles, machinery, or any other items that hold heat or be a possible source of ignition. These come in various forms and price points that can meet most all of your needs. The use of these devices should become a daily routine in your operations. This routine would be easy to conduct in the time it takes you to walk your facility. The fire code requires a minimum rated fire extinguisher for the classification of anticipated fires, classification of commodities, and hazard classification, as we previously talked about. The standard ABC fire extinguishers, those red ones you'll see, and you'll see that in the picture on the right, the red one, meet these requirements, and you would be in compliance. But anyone on this webinar that has had a fire during operational hours will tell you water is the answer. The 2.5 gallon pressurized water extinguishers can be the solution until a reliable source of water can be established, like a garden hose, to hold a small fire in check before the sprinklers have to go to work and the BRTs arrive. And if you think about the ways to extinguish a fire that we talked about a few slides ago, you'll remember that the cooling of burning material is an accepted method and, quite frankly, the most common. Water is what comes out of the sprinkler pipes and what the fire trucks carry. So recommendations for improvements in your facility. This includes adherence to the plans and training per OSHA. You can't have enough signage, whether it's pictographs describing use of extinguishers, hazard identification. This also protects the first responders, and exit directional signs. And don't forget to use language that fits your workforce. English may not be their first language. Lowering risk is an approach that involves every stakeholder in your organization. Engagement or buy-in from each of them will depend upon your attitude and commitment to a fire-safe culture. Stay in compliance. This can't be overstated. This webinar is but a tip of the spear for a culture of fire safety. When you are in compliance with the applicable codes, you're taking the initiative to keeping your business in business. Don't wait for the fire inspector to visit your facility. Be proactive. The fire code and OSHA requirements are what give you the guidelines for safe operations and employee training. Depends on what jurisdiction your facility is located as to what codes are applicable. Other codes are generally the same throughout the country. I have a passion for sharing my experience in fire prevention. And this is a program that I developed to assist MRC to promote fire safety and risk reduction. Fire safety. Excuse me. This is a program that I developed to assist MRC to promote fire safety and risk reduction to the facility operators.
I can take over for
Excuse me. Excuse me. I almost choked on that. I had the water with me too. So,
I can take over. I can take over for a moment, Dave.
I got it now, Mike. Thank you.
All right, back to you.
Okay. So the last two, and that was pretty much it. Good timing for the loss of voice, but at this time, I welcome ideas and contributions that have worked for you. Don't be shy about what has worked for you, because you are working in your facility every day, and you know it better than anyone else.
Thank you so much, Dave. This is a recorded webinar, so we can't take questions today, but as you can see, Dave's contact is up there. Mike O'Donnell, you can always reach out to me directly as well. Just some important takeaways. We really recommend that everybody out there contract with a local fire inspector, somebody in your area, that you're engaging your staff, that you're understanding that fires are real risks at your facilities. We've seen a tremendous amount of them. And yet we're also seeing that they're virtually all entirely preventable. So I hope that you found today's webinar helpful, and we look forward to any questions or comments you might have. Thank you all for joining us today.